Hi again. Page 172 of The Three Worlds, Plan of Redemption by Nelson Barbour, Charles Taze Russell, taking up the parable of the 10 virgins, Matthew 25 verse 1. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened to 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. In this parable, the last special movement prior to the coming of the bridegroom is set forth. Notice the language. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened. It is not now, but at some future time it shall be likened. While every other parable is in the present tense, this stands alone as the only exception. The kingdom of heaven is likened to a sower. The kingdom of heaven is likened to a net. The kingdom of heaven is likened to a nobleman, to 3 measures of meal, to a grain of mustard seed, etc., etc. All in the present tense, and all span the gospel dispensation. But the one of the 10 virgins, if Jesus used the proper language, was to be fulfilled at the ending of the gospel. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom, and were disappointed, for he tarries, and they slumber and sleep. Another cry is made, Go ye out to meet him. And in accordance with that cry he comes. And they that were ready go in with him to the marriage, and the door is shut. Strive to enter in, for I say unto you, many shall seek to enter in, and not be able, when once the master of the house has risen up and shut the door. It is well known that during the present century there has been a great Advent movement, commencing perhaps with Wolfe, who preached in Europe and Asia, but centering mainly in this country in what is often called the Miller movement, which culminated on the 10th day of the 7th month of 1844. And we purpose to show that in this special movement the above parable began to be fulfilled. The fact that there has always been more or less expectation of the coming of Christ during the whole time of his absence does not militate against this application, as will be seen when all the details are made to appear. In the first place, it is certain such a movement, as is represented in this parable, must occur prior to the second advent. That is, there must be a going forth to meet the bridegroom, followed by a disappointment. For he is represented as tarrying, then another going out to meet him, which is to end with success. All this the parable clearly brings out. Exception may be taken by some to a full application of all the details of the parable, as many have been taught that parables are given to teach one and only one leading idea. But it will be observed that wherever Jesus explains a parable, he always makes every part have a full application. See his explanation of the tares and the wheat, the sower by the wayside, etc. And in Mark 4:13, he makes the parable of the sower, which is so full of details and so perfect in its application, the sample by which all parables are to be explained. And he said unto them, Know ye not this parable? And how then will you know all parables? Then he explains the sower, the seed, the wayside, the good ground, the stony ground, the thorns, the birds of the air, etc., making in the explanation an application of every thought expressed in the parable. Can we do better than to follow his instructions in understanding all parables? The force of the present application of this, of the 10 virgins, will be seen by every reader, I think, when the details are all brought out. So next time we go into the details, but I would have to say that his assumption here that because Jesus said that about one parable, therefore all parables must be interpreted this way, is just false. Put in a link to The Rise of Adventism, Part 1, because yes, it is true that this Advent movement goes back at least to the late 1820s, and the spirit that was in the air, and he actually picks a good year for the climax of that Miller movement, 1844, but actually 43 was the first unfulfilled prophecy of that specific Millerite movement. Miller died disappointed, that's true, and many others who followed his method of interpreting Scripture, including Barbour, I think would have died disappointed, because the basic assumption of it is that the year-day theory is a rule by which you can determine all prophetic periods. And of course, the only one the Watchtower now has available to it is 1914. All the others that were extrapolations from that year for a day or day for a year rule have been embarrassed by the passage of time. So next time he goes deep into the 10 virgins and its application to the period from 1844 onward.